good coaches understand that we all need good coaching.
Your conscious awareness that we are, sentient human beings and we do have choice.
So that's the advantage of a coach or consultant coming in. They can see those things.
Awareness is this beautiful, peaceful, loving undercurrent.
You should help people tell their stories.
That real human connection has never been any more important.
The work is ongoing.
Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. As you're coming in, everybody, drop a hello in the comments. Let us know that you are here. Sam, hello. Let's do the thing that we do. It's nice to see you, Sam. As folks are coming in, I was going to say this. I put it as a comment. I know yesterday there were some lives that were struggling with some folks. Like I tried to go into one yesterday and I couldn't get into it, so I went to YouTube. If anybody comes in at some point in the comments, William, and says there are other people struggling, we might have to direct them to the YouTube channel, which I put a link in the comments on the post. So hopefully that'll make that streamlined. Anybody else popping in, say hello in the chat. For those of you who don't know, this is Tilted Bench. I do this show every Wednesday at noon Eastern. We talk to professional coaches about what they do, why they do it, why it's important, how it works. And I'm very happy to have with us today, Cathlyn Melvin. Hi, Cathlyn.
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
Me too. I'm glad you said yes. It's good to have you here. Why don't you kick us off? Go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So who I am, my name is Cathlyn Melvin. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm a cat person, as you can probably tell. Behind me, you can see lots of paintings of my cat. I am just learning how to roller skate, and I started painting earlier this year. And I'm a home baker. So those are the kinds of things that I am and I am identifying with currently. On the work side, the work that I do is all about getting the message that's on my clients' hearts out into the world, into the minds of the people who are really needing to hear it. And I do that in a couple different ways. So one way is through copywriting. I write a lot of nurture email sequences, welcome sequences, those sorts of things. And then the other side of my business is TEDx coaching, where I take business owners through that whole process from figuring out what their idea is, finding events, getting applications out there, writing and editing the talk, all the way up to getting them on their feet and ready for their final performance.
That's good stuff. And thank you for talking about who those people are, because one thing we always want to know is, who your clients are. Do you have specific stages of the process specifically that you like people to be in, or are you happy to work with anybody anyway, from having just the basic idea to being pretty well developed?
Usually when people come to me, they're in a space where they have a general sort of maybe kind of idea of what they want to talk about. And so that's where we'll start. We'll start with defining what that really specific version of that idea is that turns into what TED calls your idea worth spreading. I have worked with speakers as they've come through later parts of the process, that they come to me for delivery coaching or that sort of thing. They come to me, they have a script, they want it edited. But for the most part, they go through the whole process with me from beginning to end.
And I think it's important to point out at this point that you have, your own experience with this, right? That has brought you to the point of coaching it, that you did your own TEDx talk. It's called The Brave Leap Sideways. It's a great one. I recommend it, everybody. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, about the talk itself and kind of the process of getting into that?
Yeah. So the reason that I ended up coaching TEDx speakers is because I had given this talk and was gearing my community up to have it come out on YouTube so that they could spread the word. And my colleagues in the online business world started looking at my past experience, which included being a competitive speaker way back in high school, coaching speech for a high school team for a few years. My degree is in theater. And then I worked as an actor and a director and a theater educator for over a decade, all before I started my work as a messaging person doing copywriting and editing, which writing and editing are obviously a huge part of the process too. And so they started looking at all of that. And then they were like, and you've given a TEDx talk. I want a TEDx talk. Can you help me? Now, I will say that the people that I had that conversation with back in 2021, at the time that I was getting ready for my talk to come out, they have not pursued their TEDx talk yet, but they did sort of organically get me into doing this work. And so I've been able to work with other speakers. The talk itself, I had wanted to give a TEDx talk for a very long time, like since those talks started coming out online, even before TEDx was a thing, when it was just TED and those videos started coming out in the early 2000s. And for a long time, I just didn't know what that message was that I wanted to share. And so I had been working as an actor. I had an arts education business. That was my first business. And it came time to leave the theater industry for a lot of reasons for me. And what I decided to do was go to law school because I would be a great attorney. But I did not stay in law school. And that is what inspired the idea of the brave leap sideways, which is what the title of my talk is. And so it was as I was going through the process of sort of disentangling myself from law school and having all of these things, all of this like shame of dropping out, of quitting coming up, worry that my family and friends who had been so supportive and who had felt like, oh yeah, law school, that's great, that's where she's meant to be. I felt like if I dropped out, maybe they would feel like I hadn't valued all of that support. And so I was dealing with all of these like beliefs and stories that were coming up for me. And I realized that a lot of us are taught from a very early age that the most important thing when you start something is to see it through, is to finish it. And so it's the brave leap sideways is the idea that sometimes the best choice, the most powerful choice is to take your brave leap sideways off of whatever treadmill you're stuck on, land on the ground next to it so that you can then take a breath and figure out what your next right direction is. And that might not be your forever direction, but to find the next right path for you.
Sam has this great question over here about undoing things.
Yeah. So I'm gonna answer that in two different ways. One, something that I always share with my clients, even when they are starting from scratch with me, is that the work that we do together needs to stay flexible. When I was working as a teacher, as a theater teacher, we used to say we're flexible as gummy worms. And so we'll stay flexible as gummy worms because one of the things that I have them do, for example, is because TEDx events can be hard to pin down. They're all independently organized, so they all have different schedules, different energies, different processes. And so you might come across an event that has just posted their application and their event is in 2 months. Totally not enough time, right? To write, edit, memorize, rehearse a talk. So working with me we start with applications, but then we continue working with applications over here while we also get started writing your talk. So that when one of those last minute events comes up, you can say, oh yeah, I can apply. I can be ready in 2 months. I'm good. Or, and this has happened to people in the past, where an event organizer will email them and say, hey, you applied. We said no, but now we've had someone drop out. Our event is next week. We need a speaker. And so always being ready. That said, and this is what gets back to your question, if you're working with me hi, Trevor, glad you made it. If you're working with me to develop your talk, to go through that process, I want you to know that when you get accepted into an event, that you're going to give your draft to the team over at that event. And they might say, ooh, actually, let's focus more on this part, or let's delete this. Things may change. They don't always, but I want you to go in with the mindset, with the awareness that it's never quite finished until you've given your talk. So undoing things, I think that is an important sort of frame of mind to be open to. When people come to me and they're looking for editing, or they're looking for delivery coaching, what I will usually have them do is send me a copy of the script first. And if they're coming to me for editing, that's great, because I'll edit it and I'll do the undoing and then the redoing. If they think that their talk script is finalized and they're ready for delivery coaching, and they send me a talk script and I'm like, this isn't, it's not ready, then that's a conversation that I'll have with them, because if they've already memorized that thing, they're off to the races in that direction and I'm not the person for them.
Right.
But if they haven't memorized it, then we can say, okay, let's do some reworking of this script so that we can get it into a really great place for you to have an effective talk. Because that's what it's about. It's about spreading those ideas. And you can't do that if your script's a mess.
Right. Another thing I wanted to kind of ask you about, you have this imagery in your own talk about jumping off of the treadmill, right? And now you're next to the treadmill and you can think about where you're going. Is there a sense in which you find when you're working with people on their talks and you're thinking about your own process going through yours, that the talk itself is a bit of kind of getting off of the treadmill? Are you kind of having to step outside of your own life a little bit to think about it and think about your message?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Is there another way that you can ask me?
I think another way I might say it is that we talk often on this show about how everyone has their story and everybody needs to find ways to share that. There's something brave about being willing to do that. We can all get kind of trapped in the day-to-day treadmill kind of rat race, hamster wheelness of life. To make the decision to try and give a TEDx talk that may not fit in with all of the day-to-day of your life. It's almost like it's a separate project that it seems to me like you kind of have to step outside of the day-to-day grind, which may be a 9 to 5 for some people. Do you find that people struggle with the specialness of those talks in that sense, in the sense that there's something kind of different from what their normal life is?
I think that, so I work specifically with business owners. So they're usually coming to TEDx from the perspective of leveraging it for visibility and credibility. And so where my people have to make the leap is that they get stuck sometimes thinking, I don't have enough speaking experience, or my business hasn't been around long enough, or I haven't done X or Y or Z that I see Brene Brown and Simon Sinek, who we shouldn't compare ourselves to because they gave their TEDx talks in 2009 and 2010, and the world has
Right.
changed.
Right.
So people get caught in comparison, people get caught in imposter syndrome, and that's the leap. They need to just be like, this is something I'm doing. This is something I'm doing. I'm going to do it scared. We were just talking, I think it was before we hit record, but talking about doing things nervous. And
Yeah.
that's the leap that people have to make to get started on their TEDx journey too. Do it scared.
I love it because, we've got Trevor, Sam, Brian, they're here. I'm glad you guys are here. There is this ongoing conversation on this show about what a lot of this work is. And there is this idea that folks need to get their story out there. And sometimes what we need is a coach to help us work through like what that story is, building up the confidence to do it. But it sounds like where you're at is kind of that next step where people have decided that they do need to do it, but there's some question of the skills at play and how do you build those and how do you identify which skills you have and which skills you need. And that brings me to something that I want to ask you to talk about. I know you are pretty intentional about having your clients do like a learning assessment, right? You like people to think about their learning styles. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and why that's so important?
Yeah. So it is important in a lot of different ways. Personally, it is important to me because I'm neurodivergent. I'm on the autism spectrum. My brain is wired differently than other people's. And I have had so many experiences in my life as a business person and also as just like a human where people say, this is the way to do it. This is what works. And I don't believe that there is ever a thing that capital W works for all people. And then outside of myself as an educator, I working with kids for over 10 years, I saw that over and over again that different people need different support. And so what I have my clients do when they come in, particularly in my group program, because one-on-one, we can have these discussions more readily. But in my group program, I have them do a learning style assessment. Sometimes people come in, they already know, oh, I'm kinesthetic, or I'm a combination of auditory and visual, but a lot of people haven't ever had an opportunity to do that. A lot of people don't even know what those 4 learning styles are. But I have them take that assessment because then throughout the program, I give different resources. So, for example, if you are at the point where you're memorizing, you're going to have a really hard time memorizing if all you have are resources for auditory learners and you're a verbal learner. And so I give all of those different types of learning. I give strategies and tips and support in those different ways because we all need them. We all need them differently. And it is so frustrating to me to see people or see myself in coaching programs where the coach is like, well, this is what worked for me, so this is what works. And that's just not, I don't think that's ever the case.
Right. I mean, especially when you get into like one-on-one work, like the whole point of that work is that it should be tailored to the individual.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I have the privilege of having had all of this experience in the education world and running my own education company to learn about those things. Also, psychology is one of my special interests. My Instagram feed is a lot of child development, a lot of learning psychology. And so that's just something that I'm constantly like absorbing and learning from myself.
I have to make an aside while we're talking about serious matters to point out that Nadine, I'm glad you made it, because Cathlyn has this like incredible cat collage behind her. And on this setting, when I give her the full screen later, you'll see more of it, but it's fantastic stuff. She's another one of the cat people that we can connect with. And Brian's got me back on track here with this one. This is everyone's story is unique, therefore the way that you tell it will be unique to them as well. So to bring us back to TEDx, when you're working through getting a talk together, organizing that skill set that somebody may not have, how much time do you have to spend with clients learning what it is about how they deliver that's going to fit them? And I mean, by that, I can mean anything to, we were talking to Eva a couple of weeks ago about some people use props. There's actions you can do. Some people are more visual. Some people have quieter delivery styles. Like they just don't yell. They don't raise their voice, but they can still make an impact that way. What's it like working through figuring that out with a client?
I think a lot of that comes out and comes up organically. It comes from even those earliest conversations. I'm working with a speaker right now who, in the onboarding process, she got really overwhelmed by the like pre-work. And I always say, you can type this out. You can voice memo it, and send me links. You can record a video and send me links if you're a verbal processor, if you're an internal processor, if you're a written processor, all different things that are going to work for you, right? And she is such she needs body doubling, and she's a verbal processor, and so what we ended up doing for her was scheduling another call and doing the pre-work together. So she had me to talk through and process with. And so with her, like those issues came up right away. And that has then informed every single other call and every step of the process that we've done together, because I had that knowledge about her. And then as far as like, what sensory aids you use, if you use slides, if you use music, a lot of that comes from the storytelling itself, because your sensory aids that you use, which are usually slides, but can be all sorts of things, they only exist to enhance the talk. They only exist to help the audience, who all have different learning styles, understand, comprehend, synthesize, and then remember the content of your talk. And so a lot of the time it's in the like early editing stages where we'll say, oh, you know what, this specific line here could be clarified by this kind of graphic or this kind of image that we can put on a slide, or things like that come up as we go through that process. So it's just like a constant discovery of what will work and what will work best.
That's great stuff. And I love, sorry, everybody, I've got a little bit of a cold. It's that beginning of school season here. Yeah, I love thinking about the interplay between the speaker and the audience too, that, we can get very focused on thinking about speech delivery and how you nail all that. But you have to remember that if nobody remembers it, then you've kind of flopped, right?
Yeah. Because the whole point of TED specifically is to spread those ideas. It is to create that ripple effect, so that as your idea grows and grows and grows and grows, you're really making that impact. And so if you one of the questions that I ask my clients early on in the process is, okay, imagine you've given your talk, you're feeling proud, you're feeling great, you're confident, you're walking off stage, the event ends, and the next day at lunch, Susan from the audience is having lunch with her best friend. And she says, "Oh my goodness, yesterday I was at this TEDx event and I saw this talk and it is all about," what is that fill in the blank? Because that is the thing that you want them to hang on to. So when we're talking about, you asked me, like, where are people at when they start working with me? And I said they have this general idea of what they want to talk about. We will create what I call their idea worth spreading, which is like a 3-part written, formalized statement. And then from there, I have them do one sentence. That one sentence is their thesis that I want them to hit all through the talk, so that the next day when Susan goes to lunch, she can remember that's the sentence. That's what this talk was all about, because that will then connect her to the other pieces in the talk.
I love that. So I want to take a sec to acknowledge, like I see, we're talking about audiences being different. I mean, here's Nadine talking about being kinesthetic, auditory, but visuals not as much of a thing. And then Sam is totally visual. So, I mean, these are
And
two.
I'm visual kinesthetic. So I need both of those things.
And
give me a video to watch, and then I can do it as I'm like, I watch the video and then I go back and step by step do it along with the video. And then I feel confident if I've done it and I've watched it.
I want to pause for just a second and be a little meta about this whole thing that we're doing with live shows, right? Because I do think with this show, one of my hopes is to turn it into a podcast later. That's down the road, but because I know a lot of people, they don't care as much about the video. They'd rather just listen. And I wonder how much the kinesthetic learning plays in with this when we look at comments, because I know there are folks who show up. There may be some of you sitting there right now listening in who don't interact. They're not interested in interacting, but there are others who really want to engage with the conversation. I mean, do you think that that's what we're seeing in a lot of these lives, is those kind of learning styles at play?
It could be. I've never thought about that before, but
I hadn't either, but you
yeah,
started this.
Potentially people who need to use their bodies are more likely to lean in and type something out. Yeah. Like, and I love listening to podcasts, but they're not a good way for me to learn. Podcasts keep me company on long drives or on walks, but because I am not an auditory learner, it's like entertainment for the moment and then it goes away. So if there's something that I really like in the moment, I'm like, ooh, that's something that I should implement, or that's something that I should look up. I have to make a note of it so that I can then go back and re-engage with it in different ways.
Right. That's a good point. Everybody, we're coming down to just a couple of minutes left. I do want to connect that back with what Brian's saying here about that you want something that people feel like they have to talk about. This is when you talk about, here's your thesis, and you have to keep hammering this. Like, the idea is to make sure they take that out and carry it away to their friends, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So everybody, if you are not already connected with Cathlyn, you can find her on LinkedIn. And Cathlyn, is that the best way to connect with you? Are there other places you like people to find you?
LinkedIn is great. I will say that this upcoming Tuesday, September 26th, I'm doing a live Q&A that'll take place on Zoom. So if you have general questions about TEDx, come over to that. And I'll have Nathan put the link in the chat, or I guess I can do that too in the comments of the post.
Yeah, we can add it back. Yeah.
But yeah, it's www.rightcatcreative.com/TEDxQA. And every time I say www, it comes out of my mouth, and I'm like, oh, that ages me. That like, people don't say that anymore. So it's rightcatcreative.com. TEDxQA.
I know, and I even like put the www dot right there, and I'm like, oh, maybe I don't need to put that, but whatever, it was already
I
typed.
think when it's typed out, it's like socially acceptable, but it's weird to say out loud.
The last thing we'll do. Oh, and everybody, you can also on Cathlyn's LinkedIn profile, you can find her website through her featured section too, so you can look over there also. Anybody you know that's interested in TEDx, anybody who's interested in it, Sam, make sure you check in with Cathlyn. The last thing I always do, I'm gonna turn off the chat. I'm gonna turn me off, Cathlyn. I'm gonna give you the whole screen so that everybody can see your cat backdrop. I mean, so that you can share, a last thought with us.
Obviously, the cats are the most important part of this.
Right. We could have both. We could have both. All right, everybody, here we go. It is all yours, Cathlyn, and then I'll come back and we'll say bye.
Fantastic. So you can see all of the paintings of my cat Tucker, because he is the mascot of Right Cat Creative and he is the official Right Cat of Right Cat Creative. So that's about Tucker. I'm sorry he's not on the call, since it seems like there are cat people on the call. He's napping in the other room. But as far as TEDx goes, the thing that I really want you to internalize and leave with is that if you want a TEDx talk, you can get a TEDx talk. There are over 3,500 TEDx events across the globe every year. A whole lot of those have open applications that you can submit for and pitch to. So if you have a TEDx talk on your vision board, on your Pinterest, on your goals list, wherever you keep your goals, because depending on what your learning style is, you probably have a visual thing or an auditory thing or a written thing. But if that's there for you, if that's a goal that you have, you can get it. And I would love to help you get there. And Nathan, that's what I got.
I love it. Cathlyn, thank you so much for being here with me today. Nadine, Brian, Trevor, Sam, always good to see you guys. Cathlyn, these are some of my best friends on the platform. I'm always so glad to see them. They are incredible people. I hope all of you have a great Wednesday. Next week we'll be with Ginny Maxwell. The event is created. You can go to my profile, find it. It's the most recent post, and you can click attend on that. And I hope everybody has a great Wednesday. Thanks, Cathlyn.